Welcome to New York's #2 sports show. The Rangers defeat the Philadelphia Flyers 5-4 in a shootout, and really a resilient win from the Rangers. Down 4-2 going into the third period. They score about halfway through the third to cut it to a one-goal deficit, and then on a power play with about 2.5 minutes to go, they tie it up. They kill off a couple of Flyer 4-on-3 power play opportunities in overtime. They get it to the shootout and they win. Pretty eventful game overall. And, a well played first period by the Rangers. I wouldn't say that they were like the better team, but they played pretty solidly and were rewarded for it by being up 1-0 after the first. Rangers were terrible in the second, all the way around. I mean, Shesterkin mainly, but just in general, where they gave up 4 goals in the second. And again, like I said, they come back. So JT Miller leaves this game with an upper body injury. He sustained it in the third period. At that time, Rangers were down 4-3. So there might have been, I don't know, 7-8 minutes left. And he was down for a while. And then at the next stoppage, he went to the locker room, didn't return, and he's being evaluated for upper body injury. I don't know if he maybe re-injured the upper body. I think it was a shoulder. The game at Colorado, where Miller ended up missing, I think, it wasn't more than like a couple of games. It could be completely unrelated, but, I think it was that same right side. So either way, I would think that JT Miller might be out for a bit here. I would be surprised if this is just a couple of games. Maybe I'm wrong. We won't know until, we should have a better idea with the Nashville game being played tomorrow. I would really be shocked if he was in the lineup. That would, really, even in a best case scenario, that'd be crazy. But JT Miller out, and obviously that hurts. I mean, as much as I feel like his season overall has been underwhelming, he's obviously a very, very important player on the team. He's the captain, of course, and, plays in basically all key situations. And, is one of their biggest, minutes eaters, amongst the forwards. So that's a big story coming out of this game for sure. With Adam Fox already out, it definitely takes away, the Rangers don't have much firepower to begin with, but, losing Miller certainly hurts that. And they were actually able to win the game. Miller's been kind of the OT merchant, and shootout, if you will, as well. He got the game winning goal at Columbus in the shootout, but they won without him in this one. But really the players, really two come to mind that really were the driving force of this win and comeback. Artemi Panarin, the biggest one with 2 goals, and he scored the winner, the first of 2 goals in the shootout. Panarin and Trocheck scored in the shootout, but Panarin was really, really good. He took a couple of penalties, but really, honestly, I had no problem with the one in overtime, and the other one, yeah, I don't know. Like, I'm not going to hold that against Panarin too much here. He really played very well. And then Mika Zibanejad, who made a nice pass on the first Panarin goal. And then Zibanejad had the game tying goal, the power play goal, with 2:34 left. And he really deserves a lot of credit. Although the Flyers kind of fucked up themselves, but we'll talk about, I brought up the Panarin penalty in overtime. Zibanejad, for probably 1:30 of that 2-minute kill, he was on for that. And did a really nice job. And he might have been on again late too. But Scott Morrow, we'll talk about Scott Morrow. He had a very eventful day. He takes a penalty with 50 seconds left in overtime, and I can't remember if it was Zibanejad or Trocheck. I think it might have been Zibanejad as well there. So yeah, like, those were to me definitely the 2 best Ranger players. There were some other like positives individually, but definitely, without their, productivity, the Rangers are not coming back in this game. And as far as the lineup goes, look, Rangers caught some breaks as far as like who the Flyers have. Look, the Rangers, we spoke about how, they're not the most healthy team, but every team goes through injuries. The Flyers, look, Vladar, their starting goalie, he's been very good this year. He was out due to injury. So the Rangers faced Sam Ersson, and that really honestly may have contributed to the Rangers win. Like, a couple of not so great goals by Ersson. I think if you're a Flyer fan, you're a little bit disappointed in him. Christian Dvorak, who's one of their top centers, was out. I mean, of course, Tyson Forster's out for the season. He was their goals leader before he went down. So, not exactly the optimal Philadelphia Flyer lineup. But hey, like I said, all teams go through it, Rangers included. But, definitely Rangers ultimately kind of took advantage of some of that. Um, and then so Artemi Panarin returns to the lineup. Of course, he missed last game against the Blues. He was under the weather. And so it was Taylor Radish that came out of the lineup. It was really either going to be Othman or Radish. They decided to keep Othman in, and Othman didn't play a whole lot in this game. The most notable thing for him is he ends up getting to a fight with Nick Delorier, and Delorier really kicked his ass. But I give Othman credit. Like, he took a big hit from Delorier, which was actually called a penalty. And Othman, look, I don't even think he knew who it was, but he was just ready to drop the gloves. So look, like, um, definitely wasn't pretty. Like, Delorier just had punch after punch after punch. So not exactly a fun game for Othman, but one where there's respect there for the fact that he actually, was willing to do that. But he played less than 5 minutes. Matt Rempe also played less than 5 minutes as well. With the way the game was, and especially when Miller got hurt, Carrot kind of moved up to the top nine. And so, yeah, like, as far as the lineup now, there will be essentially one odd man out for the Nashville game. Assuming Miller's out, Brodzinski and Radish were the scratches in this game. At least one of them's coming in, if not both. Because again, like, you never know. Like, there's a lot of potential candidates, and Rempe included, right? Like, I want Matt Rempe in the lineup, but if we're being fair here, like, he hasn't exactly made the biggest impact since he's been back. And so I think he probably is in the conversation. Um, but, again, with the Miller injury here, it makes the decision not as difficult because, again, it would only be one forward healthy scratch. So we'll see what that is. And then as far as the defensemen go, I wouldn't be shocked if Morrow, no, in this game, Urho Vaakanainen was healthy scratch again, which has mostly been the case. Morrow, he made a couple of really bad plays. So after that Othman fight, he it's a really bad turn for Morrow that leads to a surrender goal for the Flyers. So that adds insult to injury for for Brendan Othman, where it's like, not only does he get into this fight, the Rangers actually get a power play, but they give up a short-handed goal. And then Morrow also makes a really bad turnover on the 3-on-3 with less than a minute left in overtime. That, again, no harm, no foul. The result of it. But also it's not like It's not like Scott Morrow played terribly 5-on-5. So I don't know. Just in the case that it's a back-to-back, there's a chance that Vaakanainen does slot in for Morrow. I'm not saying I agree or disagree with it, but just kind of trying to predict what the lineup may look like. Of course, Jonathan Quick will be in net as well. So I kind of just gave a little bit of a Predator preview, but we'll touch a little bit more on Nashville after discussing this Flyer game. And yeah, look, Shesterkin was not very good. The second period, it was pretty awful, honestly. And so Igor, again, it's just each game. Here's what I'll say about Igor. It just feels like there's at least one bad goal by Igor. Even like in the Blue game, he played very well, but even that one goal he gave up was not the best. And here he gave up at least 2 goals that he'd want to have back. But yeah, let's discuss the game. The defensive pairings were as you'd expect. For the forwards, it started out, Panarin's back in there with Zibanejad and Lafreniere. That's been a pretty consistent line they've stuck with. I mean, Lafreniere really, again, did absolutely nothing. I mean, it's just, it's really bad, but I mean, it's not a surprise at this point. They started out with Sherry, Miller, and Trocheck, and then the third line to start was Laba centering Perreault and Cooley. Now, that first period, that third line was good with Perreault, but Sherry was kind of messing up certain opportunities on that Trocheck line. So Sullivan made the switch, and I understand why he did it, but I almost feel like it ended up not working out. In some ways, I feel like it made that Laba line worse with Sherry on it, but you're rewarding Perreault. So I like that they rewarded Perreault, because I actually thought that Gabe Perreault had a pretty solid game here. Held his own, like, didn't make too many mistakes. Got an assist. Again, like, I like what I see from him. It's not amazing, but it's solid. So again, it's not being critical of Sullivan, but I may have left it alone despite kind of Sherry really looking bad and really throughout the game. Like kind of, it's such an unfortunate thing. The fact that he has the role that he's in, you can blame Sullivan. That's fair, but it's more of a roster issue. The fact like that's even a thing, right? Like I could like Lafreniere as it is not good as a top six forward, and then you add in this Sherry, whatever, revolving door thing. So yeah, that's kind of what happened. And so again, it's kind of you try to you fill one hole and then there's another leak elsewhere. Is kind of the way I look at that. Um, but first period was kind of a typical Rangers sort of first period where not a whole lot of goal scoring, a lot of continuous action. But then at 13:57, Rundstrom strips Panarin. And I feel like, generally speaking, the Flyers I think got off to the better start. And the Rangers kind of picked up the pace a little bit as the period goes along. Rangers don't score on that power play. It was okay, that particular one. It was all right. They kept Morrow on that number one unit, even with Panarin coming back, and they took off, I guess, technically Lafreniere, I think, was the one that was on last game. But when Miller came out of the game later on, Cooley was the one that took the Miller spot at the end of the game, at the end of the third period. But at the end of the first, the Rangers score. They take the lead, and it's Panarin scoring his 12th goal of the season from Zibanejad. So Panarin, look, the rest helped him, obviously, from being sick. And it was a face-off loss, actually. But Zibanejad did a nice job of anticipating the Travis Sanheim, or, around the boards, trying to get into the zone. Zibanejad gets there, and Panarin gets in position. And Zibanejad makes the quick pass. Panarin's all alone, just one-on-one with Airson, and just rips a wrist shot, past him. So again, I mean, when Panarin, he's a really good shooter. Obviously his bread and butter, no pun intended, is his vision and passing ability, but like he really has a great shot. He really probably has the best shot on the team, so as far as wrist shots go, for sure. And the Rangers take a 1-0 lead. But we go to the second, and where everything turns is at 5:17, Will Cooley was called for interference on Michkov. But really what initially happened, it was strange. What initially happened was, Laba takes a hit from, who was it? He took a hit from Andre, the Flyer defenseman. And I guess I'm all right. Like, that, they didn't call a penalty. They could have. They didn't. But then there's a skirmish where kind of Sherry goes after Andre. Like, it's a whole big thing. So I'm surprised, like, that the Cooley, like, the Rangers may have ultimately ended up shorthanded. I was hoping things would even itself out. But yeah, the fact that the Cooley interference thing was the only thing called was strange to me. And the Cooley interference situation happened, like, after the hit that Laba took. So yeah, like, I don't agree with the way that that was handled by the officials there. But really, that had a major effect on what was to come. And the Rangers special teams in that second period was horrific. Now, the special teams got a lot better in the third and overtime, but man, that second period, it was atrocious. And really, if they lost this game, a lot of the conversation would have been Shesterkin and the special teams, but the Rangers ended up coming back. But Travis Sanheim scores his third goal of the season from Denver Barkey and Michkov. So Barkey makes his NHL debut and was unbelievable and really was very good. He had a couple of assists. Like, he drew a penalty, I think, that might have led to a goal, possibly. I think it did. Yeah, we'll talk about that. But yeah, he was excellent. But Sanheim was in pretty good position, but it's really one where Igor wants to have back. It's one of those things where I think Laba, maybe had a chance to get the puck out of the zone. Didn't, like, it wasn't egregious or anything. And, I think Zibanejad tried to help Laba out, and it ends up putting Sanheim in a good position, but it kind of goes through Igor. So again, not a good goal by Shesterkin. Power play goal makes it 1-1. And then 23 seconds later, Owen Tippett scores his 10th goal from Barkey and York. So just like that, two quick primary assists from Barkey. And yeah, just the Zibanejad line was kind of trapped in their own zone, and Tippett takes a shot from far out, and he scores. I mean, give Tippett a little bit of credit. It was a decent shot, but one that Shesterkin really needs to stop, and stop the bleeding. And so it's 2-1 Philly with that. So those to me were the two worst goals allowed by Igor. But again, just even you could, I think, make blame in little ways of all four goals. that he allowed there. Now, in and around that, he was good. He was good in the first period. Really, around that, he actually was very good. Made some very big saves, but just totally horrible in that second. At 10:15, Panarin slashes Barkey. He slashed him. And again, I feel like they're calling those a lot. Even though sometimes they look a little bit soft, but either way, the Flyer power play gets them again. And this is a Flyer power play that came in like 0 for the last 16, which makes it all the more frustrating. But it's a face-off win by Philly, a loss by, I believe, Trocheck, which it's a very quick play. Drysdale to Zegras. Zegras one-time score on the slap shot makes it 3-1 Philly. Um, and, you know, the Rangers were able shortly thereafter, 2 minutes and 5 seconds after, for Artemi Panarin to score a second goal of the game, 13th of the season unassisted. So what was a turnover in the neutral zone by the Flyers ends up on Panarin's stick, goes in with some speed, and snaps it past Ersson to cut it to 3-2. And then is where you have the Nicholas Delorier, Brennan Hoffman situation, where Delorier is called for boarding, a 2-minute minor, but then they fight. And Delorier is one of the best fighters in the league. Like, he's fought, I mean, him and Matt Rempe, he really got the better of Matt Rempe a couple of seasons ago, and he really was pummeling Brennan Hoffman. But the Rangers end up with the power play, and this is where Scott Morrow just has a really bad turnover. Now, Vincent Trocheck, who actually had a Vincent Trocheck for the first two periods had a horrible, horrible game. And Trocheck, if the Rangers lost, I think for me, Trocheck would have been a big talking point for me, but he ends up scoring. He ends up contributing to the win. So he was able to kind of quell that. But yeah, like Trocheck, not a great back pass, but still, that all said, Morrow just turns it right over to Travis Sanheim. And it ends up in kind of a 2-on-1/3-on-1. And Rodrigo Abols scores his second goal of the season. It's shorthanded from Sanheim at 14:36. So not only the Rangers giving up goals, in the form of their penalty kill not doing the job, but then, and we see it a lot lately, and the whole, the complaint was the Rangers needed defensemen. The ironic thing is that part of the reason why Scott Morrow hasn't really been, why they waited so long, is because he will make mistakes. And so, the 5 forward unit, there's a little bit of slight vindication. I still would prefer a defenseman get that fifth spot, especially now, to me, with JT Miller potentially being out as well. It doesn't make me think, okay, like, let's throw, Lafreniere. I just don't think, actually Gabe Perreault, I wouldn't mind seeing on the first power play, but that's a conversation for another day. But yeah, it's a odd man chance the other way, and they score, and it goes kind of under Shesterkin. Bit of a fortunate goal, because I think it goes off of a Bull's skate. It wasn't like a direct kicking motion, but makes it 4-2 Flyers. And then at 16:08, Noah Laba trips a Bulls. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And the Rangers do kill that off. So again, like, there's situations there where, like, this game really, if the Flyers take a 3-goal lead, like, this probably is all she wrote. The Rangers do kill that one off, and they go to the third period. And the Rangers played a pretty good third. And that's the thing, right? I've been critical at times of lackluster third periods when they've been shown, but I've also acknowledged they've done a nice job with some comebacks here as well. And that has been a big difference from last year, where the Rangers, like, were incapable, down by 2 goals. I mean, they literally didn't win a game down by 2 goals until the second last game of the season. And even that comeback basically happened in the second period of that game last year. I was at that one, so that's why I have a good memory on that. But hey, like, I do like to see this. It shows resilience. It shows, I think it's good for confidence as well for future situations. The fact that once they did it kind of that first time, I think it's been just kind of a snowball effect. And it just seems like, they know that they can do it. And the Rangers had a terrible, terrible power play. Nick Seeler hooks Laba at 4:16, and this was just a horrific looking power play. The fans started to do. I didn't blame them. It was just ugly all the way around. They never got really much traction at all. But they're able to get kind of a fluky goal at 9:13. Trocheck, who had not scored in like 11 or 12 games, scores his 6th goal of the season from Miller and Perreault. And yeah, this was pretty close, to JT Miller being offside, but the Flyers didn't challenge it. But it ends up kind of being a situation where Trocheck's initial shot is stopped, by Airson, but then is a loose puck in front. And Trocheck kind of is able to get a stick on it. It deflects off of the Flyers defenseman's skate and goes 5-hole past Airson, just trickles by him. Again, if you're a Flyer fan, that's got to be a frustrating one to give up there. The Rangers needed that badly to cut it to one. They needed that, right? If this stayed a 2-goal game and there's 5 minutes left, the Rangers, in my opinion, simply aren't coming back. So that makes it 4-3. JT Miller gets that injury, like I said, a few minutes after that. I think it was sort of a reverse check by Nick Sealer, I think it was, near the bench, near the Rangers bench. And JT Miller was like down for a good amount of time. It didn't stop play. He was able to get, hobble over there to the bench. But that next stoppage went straight to the locker room. So we'll see what the update is on him. Again, don't think it'll be a great one. But the Rangers are able to stick with it. Carrick kind of moves to the top 9. You don't really see Othman and Rempe again. I think it's Cooley that basically moves up to play with Trocheck and Perreault, I think is what mainly happened. And the Rangers draw a power play. Rasmus Ristolainen, delay of game with 3 minutes left. This really works out well. Because I'm thinking to myself, the Rangers need a stoppage in general. Like, the Flyers had control of the play. It reminded me of the Rangers versus Vegas, but the other way, where I thought the Rangers, I didn't want there to be a stoppage, and I thought the commercial timeout helped Vegas. Here, not only do you get the power play, but just in general, I thought the Rangers needed a reset, and they're able to get the job done on the power play. Like I said, Cooley takes the JT Miller spot. They keep Scott Morrow out there. Despite Scott Morrow making that earlier mistake, Sullivan sticks with him, so I give him credit for that. And they win the faceoff. I believe it was Trocheck that wins the draw. And it's kind of just a simple pass play. Morrow to Mika Zibanejad, and he one-times it in 5-hole past Airson. So it was accurate in the sense of not hitting a corner, but just going straight to the goalie. And it goes really under Airson. So, look, I think it's 21 staff back. But the Rangers tied up at 4. So yet another, under 3 minutes. It wasn't a goalie pull, and I'm glad as well that Sullivan did not pull Shesterkin. I did not want 6-on-5, 6-on-4 there. Let it be 5-on-4 and see how it plays out. And the Rangers tied up at 4. Flyers had a couple of opportunities at the end of regulation, but we go to overtime. And right away, and they start out with Zibanejad, Panarin, and Gavrikov. And by the way, Flyers, I believe, have a very good record, I think. They didn't show the graphic, and I didn't check it. I know in the shootout they're really good because they have Zegras and Michkov, but I think just in general they have a pretty good. Although actually I don't know. I think that they actually a lot of their games. Let me check to be sure. But I think, yeah, they were going into this game 5-2 in the shootout, meaning that they were. Yeah, so they're not that great in the 3-on-3, actually. Yeah, they may be actually average, maybe below average. Either way, all that to say, Panarin takes an 8 seconds in, he slashes Cam York. And I don't blame Panarin. Puck possession's key in that situation. It more optically looked bad than anything else, where York's stick ends up breaking, but not like, either way, it was one of those things where I wasn't so upset with the call. Like, you're going to call that in that spot. But I also wasn't upset with Panarin. Like, that would have been key if he could have got the puck. He doesn't. So I'm thinking, okay, this is probably game over. But somehow, some way, and Gavrikov is trying to out there the whole time. Give them a lot of credit. I mean, they played a lot of minutes in this game. Gavrikov, I think, close to 29 minutes. Shire, like 25. They were on the whole time. Trocheck was on for the first 30 seconds, then Zibanejad for the remainder of it. And the Flyers just kept on passing it around. They really were their own worst enemy. The Rangers were positionally sound, but the Flyers really just were not taking shots on Shesterkin. They were doing the Rangers a favor. And so they are able to kill it off. It becomes 4-on-4 from that. But then eventually, Scott Morrow, just with an inexplicable bad turnover that leads to him having to trip Zegras with 50 seconds left in overtime. So here we go again. But the Rangers were able, they got some clears on this one. And they get to the shootout somehow, some way. Again, that is essentially 2 minutes and 50 seconds. More than half of that overtime was 4-on-3 Flyers. So we go to the overtime, and it's the first Rangers home shootout. So it's the first one with Sullivan. So I wasn't sure if they'd go first or second. They decided to go first. As a fan, I've always liked to have last licks, but And I feel like you're seeing that more now, but for the longest time, teams would typically shoot first. And that's probably still the case. The Rangers had one previous shootout where it was a win at Columbus, and that was where JT Miller got the winner. I'm trying to think who had the other goal in that scenario. It would have either been Panarin or Trocheck. I remember being surprised that Zibanejad wasn't part of the top three. And I'm just trying to remember who. I think it actually may have been Trocheck, who actually has a really good career shootout numbers. It's kind of flies under the radar a little bit. But against the Flyers, I mean, this is one of the toughest teams to face in the shootout. But the Rangers end up going perfect. Panarin scores to start it out. Then Zegras is stopped. And at that's where you felt pretty good. You feel even better when Vincent Trocheck makes it 2-0, and then Konechny, who they go with. I guess Tocchet was thinking, the Flyers head coach was thinking, Michkov, like, in that situation, let's save him for, like, the third spot. Because Konechny is 6 for 30. That's pretty bad in his career in the shootout. They go with him. Shesterkin makes the save, and the Rangers win 5-4. Again, like we keep on saying, it's a much-needed win for the Rangers if they want to hang in this thing. And, look, I have my doubts about this team. I think most fans do. But, look, I want things to stay interesting. You know, it's even though, again, it could be having if the Rangers just totally, like flailed out and were losing games left to right. Look, could that in a weird way be beneficial? Yes, it could. But I think there's just too many unknowns. And for now, I've come close to, kind of almost preferring losses, but they keep on, like I said, they keep on finding ways to hang in there. And it's not pretty at all. But anyway, Predators are up next. And the Rangers, as we know, have had massive struggles in the second game of back-to-back. 0-5-1. They've been very good in the first game of back-to-back. Like, I'm not sure what it comes out to. At this point, probably currently, I think maybe 5-1-1. Like, they're very good in those first games, record-wise, but horrible in the second. So with Nashville, they'll be facing a team that will also be on a second of a back-to-back. They're home against the Maple Leafs. But for them, there's no travel component. It's in Nashville for both games. So, again, like with Nashville, the interesting thing is, depending on how the night's games go, the Rangers may again be technically facing a last-place team based on points, but however you want to look at it. Like, the Predators are that close. Like, technically, as I'm recording this, they are last in points percentage in the NHL. So, look, like the Rangers beat them at home earlier. There's no doubt that Nashville is one of the worst teams in the league. However, again, I have based on the Rangers track record this year, I don't know that they're going to beat them necessarily. Nashville's been playing better lately. They really have been. They lost their last game, but they really have been playing better lately. Look, they clearly are one of the worst teams in the league. They're tied for the least amount of points. They barely have the worst points percentage. They have one of the worst goal differentials in the league. But that all said, again, like, JT Miller being out doesn't help things. Jonathan Quick will be in net. And he's obviously done a really nice job this season. So that's not such a factor in my mind, really. But we'll see. Like the Rangers, it's actually a very big game. It may not feel that way. It's this like kind of random Sunday night game, against a pretty bad Predator team. But if the Rangers want to make, headway in this Eastern Conference race, it's imperative that they find a way to get 2 points against the Predators, where the schedule will get tougher after that. Like the rest of the month, early in January, you will face tougher teams. And so you have to find a way to bank points against the lesser ones. We'll see what the Predators do against the Leafs. Like I'll say that if the Predators beat the Leafs, I will feel a little bit better at the Rangers' chances than if the Predators are coming off a loss. It's always kind of been my, I think that does make a difference, but we'll see what happens and what Nashville does as far as their goalies. We'll see. I'm sure they'll go with one against Toronto, the other against the Rangers. So, we'll await news on JT Miller again. He leaves with an upper body injury. I suspect he might be out for a decent amount of time. Didn't look great. Artemi Panarin, a couple of goals. Mika Zibanejad with the game-tying goal. And they find a way to get a nice comeback win home against the Flyers. They win it by a final score of 5-4. They get it done in the shootout, and now they will head to Nashville to take on the Predators.